Hello mathematicians, so we are on page 15 of our unit 6 packet. We are looking at day 8. We are still solving quadratic equations and we're working with real world applications. So here you have to remember to keep things realistic and if they make sense. So for today we're going to look at number 1. So again we're presented with a word problem. So we'll read it twice, and on the second read, we'll annotate. So it says, the demon drop at Cellar Point in Ohio takes rides to the top of a tower and drops them 60 feet. A function that approximates this ride is h equals negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 60, where h is the height of the rides in feet and t is the time in seconds. To the nearest tenth, how many seconds does it take for riders to hit the ground? So on the second read, I will underline. The demon drop at Cellar Point in Ohio takes rides to the top of a tower and drops them 60 feet. A function that approximates this ride is h equals negative 16t plus 64t plus 60, where h is the height of the ride in feet and t is the time in seconds. I'm going to change my color because now I'm talking about the question. To the nearest tenth, how many seconds does it take for the ride to hit the ground? Well, when it hits the ground, right, focusing on this right here, hits the ground, I know the ground level height is 0, right? So h would equal 0 here. So if I'm going back and I'm going to use this equation that was given to me, then my equation would look like 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 60. And I notice again that I'm working with quadratics. So I could use one of our solving methods. Well, first I would want to see if factoring works here. But I know that 16 does not go evenly into 60. So I won't use factoring. Completing the square I could possibly do. But again, I'm going to have to work with a fraction because I have to take out that first term. So I still divide everything by negative 16. So for this, I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So for quadratic formula, I need to know A, B, and let me change this color, C. So A would be negative 16, B would be 64, and C would be 60. And I'll put that all into the quadratic formula, which in this case I'm going to use t because it's the variable working with. So t equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And now I'm going to plug in. So I have t equals, remember, always use your parentheses. So negative 64 plus or minus the square root of 64 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 60. I'm going to make sure all this is under the radical. Let me just make this look nicer here. And all that is being divided by 2 times negative 16. Okay, when we are simplifying, we always want to do what's under the radical first. So just like I'm highlighting in red, just this part, not the radical, put into your calculator. Okay, in the meantime, we'll have t equals negative 64 plus or minus the square root, whatever that number is going to be, all divided by negative 32. And then when I ask my calculator, my bestie, she's going to tell me that that comes to be 7936. Okay? Now, I know that's not a perfect square. So when I do this, I'm going to definitely end up with a decimal, but going back to our problem, it says to the nearest tenth. So they're already telling you that you're going to end up with a decimal. So I'm going to split this open. Where am I going to do it? Do I have space? Let me move this over. Let's do it this way, because I don't really have the space here, but I would have negative 64 plus radical 796.36 all over negative 32. And I would also have negative 64 minus radical 79.36 all over negative 32. Okay? And then I would get two answers. So then when I do plus, I will end up with negative 0.8. Let me rewrite that. Negative 0.8. And here, I would end up with 4.8. Now, remember, we're finding t, and we know that t represents the time in seconds. So going back to what we found t was, can we have negative 0.8 seconds? Does that make sense here? It does not. So this actually gets rejected. Okay, so we reject this answer. And we're going to say 4.8. That's our answer. So if I had an answer box, I could write t equals 4.8 seconds. Okay, thank you.